I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is a 2022 Kia Carnival SLI. Now, we recently tested a Kia Sorento V6, which is closely related to the Carnival underneath the skin, but this is a people mover. And so we wanted to see what advantages having a people mover is over having an SUV, because an SUV is cool, all right, and a people mover is daggy. But I would suggest that the Kia Carnival is proof that people movers can be cool, at least for kids and people who like styling rather than the parent driving them. So, what makes these two different, besides the fact that Sorento only can seat 7 people and the Carnival seats 8? Well, the first thing is the size of them. The Sorento is a large SUV, but it's only 4.8 metres long, whereas the Carnival is 5.15 metres long. It is 35 centimetres longer than the SUV, which makes quite a big difference if size is everything in your modern garage. The Carnival is also 95 millimetres wider, at almost 2 metres wide, and 75 millimetres taller. And the wheelbase, which is here between the wheels, is 275 millimetres longer. So if you want to seat 8 people properly instead of 7, why not supersize it? And that's what the Carnival is all about. Now the thing is, no one buys people movers anymore. In fact, I can barely think of any people movers globally other than the Kia Carnival, the new Hyundai Staria, the Chrysler Pacifica that we don't get, and the Renault Espace, which we also don't get. So how do you make a people mover appealing? Well, I suggest you style it like the Carnival. I love these LED running lights here that kind of look zigzag-ish. I saw 2 on the road today and it really stands out. This is a cool car. This is something that you shouldn't be embarrassed about pulling up in the school car parking and picking up your multitude of children, because kids would love this. I would have liked this as a kid. Even this little blade down the side here, which it actually shares with the Sorento, but this one is kind of rippled and bigger and cooler and fits in with the slot down the side here. And as you come around to the back here, I reckon the rear lighting signature is even cooler. It looks like this kind of electrical current running across the back of the Carnival. So not only does it make it look high-tech, it completely emphasizes the width of this thing. Like, because at nearly 2 meters, it's almost as wide as a Ferrari Testarossa. And I'm sure that's exactly what Carnival buyers are thinking when they go and shop for one of these. Now, the piece de resistance, of course, is in here. With all 8 seats in place, it has 627 litres of boot space, which is actually a little bit more than what the Sorento has with only 5 seats. It only has 616 with the 3rd row down, and this has more. But when you put this row down, the Carnival has 2,785 litres of boot space, which is just enormous. Like, it totally justifies why you would buy a people mover as supersized as this. Now, I can deftly show you how these seats go back in place. You lift this here and it brings it back and folds it down into the floor, which looked very easy. And to put it back up again, you do the same thing. Other features in here, it has a little 12-volt outlet and these little cubbies here and a little covered thing here, but this is just all about space. It's not about little bits and pieces, it's about what you can fit in it, and that is way more than any large SUV. As soon as you sit in the Carnival, you can sense the width of it, but you can also appreciate the view. You sit a little bit higher than you do in, say, a Sorento, but you have this amazing, expansive, widescreen vision experience, and that's something you enjoy every moment you sit in the front seat of this car, and especially when you're driving it. It just makes you feel like you've been elevated to the more expensive seats. Speaking of which, these seats are pretty comfortable. You don't feel like you're sitting down into the car as much as you are on a Sorento, but they don't feel like they're bar stools either. This one here in this SLI spec has an 8-way adjustable seat, but that person still gets all manual. So still kind of equivalent to the base Sorento we drove last week. As for the dashboard, it isn't quite as high design as the Sorento's with all of its fancy vents and all that sort of stuff, but then that does also give the Carnival a personality of its own, with that strip around the top and this lovely vent strip through the middle that also looks like it might have been inspired by Mazda. This huge 12.3-inch screen in the middle with wide Apple CarPlay, still has analog dials here, which the entry-level Sorento also has, a similar steering wheel, similar levels of storage. We do have the ironic storage here where this thing just squeezes into it rather than actually fits into it. That's not like the Sorento. There isn't really door storage, not in the front row of this car. We do have this enormous bin in the center here. No cooling or anything in it, just a bin, but it's still a bin all the same. I will point out though that this car has an 8-speaker stereo, and maybe it's something to do with the shape of the cabin of the Carnival. It just doesn't sound as good as even the 6-speaker one with its little tweeters in the base Sorento. I thought that was surprisingly good for a base stereo, and I think this one's surprisingly kind of bright and brassy and kind of too much. It just needs to be perfectly recorded music to not be offensive in the Carnival. So that maybe is one reason why you'd want to buy the Platinum with its 12-speaker Bose stereo. I think the best story though in this car is in that row and in that row. So let's try those two. One of the coolest things about having a modern people mover like the Carnival is all the features that you get in the other rows. It's not just about the two people in the front, it's about everyone else as well. You're all part of the family. Now this SLI one here has a push button on the door which you can electronically close the door with and open it if you push it again. To get in, we have this helpful B-pillar handrail as well as this one here. And while the door doesn't look like it has an armrest, this seat here has its own individual one on the side here, but none in the middle. All these three seats are on individual runners, whereas that is not the case in the Sorento. This one is not even all the way back, and I'm sitting behind myself, and I have copious amounts of room and can still go to here, whereas here's a weird little party trick. If this person's being annoying, you can just go like that and push them all the way back, and they're back there. I don't know why you would do that, but it's also still cool. Look at all the room that they've got. Probably gives extra leg room for an adult, and this seat is still completely sittable for an adult, unlike the middle seat in a Sorento. So really, what you've got here is an 8-seater car that can seat 8 adults, not a 7-seater SUV that can seat 4 adults and 3 people in pain. Now, this seat here in the middle can also flip down, and it has a little bit in the back where it has cup holders and a little tray to play, I don't know, games, put a pillow on, have some, you can have a little salad arrangement there, that'd be nice. If we could lift this thing back up again, which isn't as easy as it could be. We have a 12-volt outlet here, we have a little tray in here, we have a takeaway hook here, we have USB ports in both of these seats here, as well as netted map pockets on the back. And the air conditioning vents, while they don't appear to be in the center here, are all in the roof. And it actually has its own digital climate control here for the center row in this SLI version. Now, I'll also show you how to get in the back. This third row is almost as good as this one. Now, unlike the last Carnival, which actually picked up the whole seat, kind of stood it on end and shoved it to the front, this one is fairly simple. It just slides forward, goes in there. I just step in to the 3-seater rear bench. I've got a little tab here that says pull. I can pull it towards myself, pull the backrest back where I want it to be, let go, and it holds in place. Now, this seat's further back than where I had it before, and I have still got toe room, I've still got knee room, I've still got all this headroom. I also have the same pair of vents that the center row has in the back row here, and the seat itself is actually really quite comfortable. For 2 adults in here, you could easily do hours in the back of the Carnival. 3, not so much, because this seat is split 60-40, and this lump here where the split is kind of pushes the middle person a little bit over to the left, which might be less of a problem if you're 35 kilos and not somewhere towards 90. This seat here is also adjustable for rake. You just pull these little tabs here and it can slide back and forth. I've got the same on this side. We have raisable headrest, as you can see behind me. We have this little neck thing here which you can pull out to sleep on, and we have 2 cup holders on both sides, actually 2 here, 1 there, little receptacles around, and then 2 more USB ports. We also have 2 more stereo speakers in here, although judging by my comments from the front, I don't know whether you'd want to hear them. The combined fuel consumption figure for the Kia Carnival is 9.6 litres per 100 kilometres, or almost exactly the same as the Sorento V6. The average fuel consumption that we got, however, is 12.5 litres per 100 kilometres, which is almost exactly the same as we got out of the Sorento V6. Kia's warranty is 7 years or unlimited kilometres. However, if you stick to the scheduled servicing, which I'll mention in a sec, You also get 8 years roadside assistance. Otherwise, it's just 1 year. The scheduled servicing is every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, and the servicing total is $2,462 over 5 years. In the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $1,091 to comprehensively insure a Kia Carnival. However, everybody's situation is different, and your premium may vary depending on things insurers take into account, like where you live, whether you garage your car, and your driving history. Now, being based on the same platform as the Sorento means that the Carnival shares a lot of hardware DNA with that car, and included in that is what's under the bonnet. Now, we're in the 3.5 litre petrol V6 with front-wheel drive and an 8-speed automatic, and it performs pretty much the same as it does in the Sorento, even though the Carnival weighs 250 kilos more. You'd imagine that something this big weighed more, but that is quite a substantial amount. Now, to probably combat that, I'd imagine the Carnival has 216 kilowatts and 355 newton meters, whereas the Sorento only has 200 and 332, and they feel roughly the same. Our fuel consumption was almost the same, and the performance is the same, which means ample for this car. Now, the biggest difference between the two of them is that, for once, the Sorento SUV, sport utility vehicle, actually has a whole big chunk of sport about it in the way that it drives, and the Carnival doesn't really have that. It isn't bad to drive, it's just not borderline great to drive, which is what the Sorento is. This is just good for a people mover, which sounds like faint praise, and it probably is, but it's just not quite as finessed. It doesn't feel as fun to drive. The previous Carnival didn't have an Australian suspension tune at all, and so it drove just like it does in every other country, which meant that the steering felt like it was connected to air rather than the front tyres. And in this case, even though this doesn't have an Australian steering tune, the steering is way better. It actually has nice weighting. I just drive it in Smart for the drive mode, which means that it gets to choose its parameters rather than having you select Comfort or Sport or whatever. Let it do its own thing, that's what it's meant to do. And it has really good weighting, it's precise, it blends with the balance and the handling of the car pretty well, and yet it isn't still as poised as the Sorento though. It doesn't have that sort of light on its feet feel. Like, we're about to hit quite a bumpy section of road here, and the Carnival tends to sort of pogo off bumps and sort of sog into dips, whereas the Sorento just seems to sort of tread over it more lightly. It's firm, but it's controlled, whereas in this case, it's a little bit soggy and just not quite finessed properly. And I suppose the same applies to the way that it corners. For such a big car, 5.15 metres long, it actually hustles with surprising ease. And it's actually quite fun to drive, but it's not anywhere near as fun as the Sorento. Now, the one thing you want the Carnival to be is safe, and not only do its dynamics help that, but also the standard safety features that it has, which are pretty much the same as what a Sorento S has. Now, it already gets AB with junction assist, it gets rear cross traffic alert, it gets lane change collision avoidance assist, it gets a safe exit warning, it gets lane departure warning and lane assist, which you can turn off on the steering wheel here because it is quite amateur. It has adaptive cruise control, yada yada yada. What the SLI adds though, it has safe exit assist, so if you try and open a door, it'll give you a nudge to not have that door open so you don't have a kid stepping out into traffic. And it also has a 360-degree camera, not just the front and rear parking sensors that the standard Carnival has, as with a standard Sorento. Now, if you start at the base level of Carnival, it's about $2,000 more than a Sorento, but you seem to get a lot more car than what $2,000 you'd imagine would buy. This SLI here is actually a little bit over 61,000 drive away, but you do get one hell of a people mover for that, with the Platinum still above it, although personally, I would buy the Platinum just for the stereo and the sunroof. What anyone considering buying a Carnival needs to be thoughtful of though, is just how much real estate they have. Like, this is not a sort of car you would buy for inner city suburbs unless you are really good at parking. It's the sort of thing that you kind of might need a garage for, whereas with the Sorento you could kind of get away with that stuff. The size difference that I mentioned at the beginning doesn't sound like much, but it does make a big difference. Though When you're sitting in this, as we pointed out when we were driving it, you've got such a great view and you can see so much in the car, and you have all of that technology that, providing you aren't completely not good behind the wheel, it's not a difficult car to own and live with. It's actually a pleasure to be in. And not to mention for your children, like to seat 8 people, this car's a superstar. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video, hit the notification bell and leave a comment on the 2022 Kia Carnival SLI or on Chasing Cars. Thanks for watching.